Two underrated best bro archetypes of the likeadragon series that I wished more fans discussed would be Yakuza 6's Nagumo Tsuyoshi and Yakuza 5's Takasugi Koichi. Expect full, respective spoilers for the entire series ahead. Here are the timestamps, and let's get into it. Nagumo. He's the backbone of Yakuza 6's new cast from Hiroshima. He's the tutorial boss for the Dragon Engine as Kiryu brawls with him in an Unomichi alleyway. Nagumo's theme in the opening is called Brother Brother, and I see it as the fitting way to start both the game and his character alike. From the very start we see Nagumo as an airhead, a brash thug, a guy who loves his local community so much that he's willing to throw hands with any outsider at any moment. And yet, as the story progresses, we learn how much of a bro Nagumo really is underneath his rough and tumble exterior. His fighting stance, for instance, is memorable, since he hobbles around with one fist raised like a goober. Nagumo reminds me of a leprechaun protecting a pot of gold, if that leprechaun could punch like a gorilla and smelled like whiskey. Take Nagumo's other boss theme named Loyalty Oath. It's the fight that takes place outside the Hirose family office. Now when Loyalty Oath plays, it's much more fiercer and grittier than Brother Brother, making both themes nice companion pieces for describing this character. Nagumo's a goofy hard ass, but he's also not going to back down from what he believes in with his whole heart. Following Nagumo's opening boss battle in the alleyway, we get to further learn about Unomichi with Nagumo as our wacko tour guide of sorts, and through whom we learn more about locals like Kiyomi, Ino, and of course the Hirose family. And in retrospect, Nagumo's practically the only Kiryu sidekick to make it to the finale and survive to live another day. His other Kyodai contemporaries that I'm talking about will either die in their own game or maybe see a sequel or a prequel appearance if they're lucky. Dudes like Shinji, Rikia, and Hanawa or Mutsunaga have their own individual cases, but are other examples of guys Kiryu becomes close with throughout the course of a game's story. Now, what I find endearing about Nagumo is his devotion to his community. Sure, he may be a Yakuza and one that's part of a lower family, technically in terms of the Yomei Alliance, but he's got that fiery passion and determination to at least set things right. The way Nagumo looks up to Papa Hirose and then helps lead the rest of the Hirose boys just pulls at the heartstrings, and they feel like a bunch of underdogs that would totally want to tag along with some guy like Kiryu. And Kiryu felt the same way since he didn't want to leave these guys hanging and help them solve the secret of Unomichi. I mean, there's at least 3 long battles and more when you have most of the Hirose boys or all of them tag along with Kiryu, such as the infiltration to the hotel where they all wear those stealth ski masks, or that like Donkey Kong style area on the docks of all the shipping containers, and of course the final like Unomichi long battle where you have to go through the tunnels and find out, well, the secret of Unomichi. So the Hirose boys definitely feel very prevalent in the story and in actual combat encounters, and Nagumo's there all the way. The first turn for Kiryu and Nagumo becoming real Kyodais in the plot is when Kiryu saves him from Mazio's attack in the Purple Temple area. You know, he saves him from the purple guy. It's hilarious, sweet, and a bit ludicrous, but it's that passion I love to see in RPG games. Seeing all these rough and tumble guys are supposed to be either scary or just intimidating, but they're actually just kind of softies on the inside. So following this savior encounter, Nagumo then tags along with Kiryu for long battles, and just strolling around town, really get to understand the guy and his dynamics of the town. The Hirose boys aren't really like the bigger Yomei Alliance that oversees them. They're mostly a gang of dignified punks wanting to keep their town safe, even if it means going against the bigger dogs in their own domain, as you see later in the plot. For instance, one of my favorite moments in any Yakuza game is when the game leaves up to you to solve all the hints scattered around Unomichi's map. As the whole team splits up, Hirose boys go find their own thing to kind of solve, trying to find a puzzle, and of course, since Kiryu's the guy you're playing as, you gotta really, you do it all yourself, you know, but it's cool finding all those poems from earlier on the map that you thought were just there to add some character to the town. Those poems are actually part of the secret Unomichi, so a lot of cool stuff that Nagumo and the boys get to be around for. Nagumo even goes through familiar territory that we've seen of Kiryu's own dramatic moments in the past, from the tragic reveal of Old Man Hirose's actual character and the heinous acts he's done to Hirose Boy's own fathers, to Nagumo's longing for a relationship with Kiyomi, and that little love triangle he has with Uno fighting over Kiyomi. It's a bit of a rivalry that's local. Or the big threatening Yakuza like Somaya, who also tie back to Kiyomi. There's a lot to latch onto with Nagumo and some of the small parallels he has with Kiryu. He's like a mix between Rikiya and Kaito. That's how I'm going to describe Nagumo. He's like a mix between Rikiya and Kaito. Then by the time we get to the finale of Yakuza 6, it's made clear as air that Nagumo's been through a bunch of crap alongside Kiryu. Two dudes who started the story as having a brawl behind a bar, a nice dumb brawl, to becoming bros investigating Kamurocho and Onomichi, to finally having the chance to beat the living hell out of the main puppet masters behind everything, that being Iwami and Sugai. The Song of Life is full of plentiful and fascinating character dynamics to explore, but I gotta say, there's a reason Nagumo's there in the finale when he and Kiryu are ready to spill some blood against these evil doers. I mean, showing up to take down an evil funeral is pretty badass. Throughout the plot of the Song of Life, Kiryu teams up with Date, Akiyama, Somaya, and Yuta throughout the story, but by the end it's Nagumo, who's determined to fight to the end with old Judgment Kazi. That's not to say the other Hirose boys didn't have a personal stake in the final fight too, because they did. They lost as much as the rest of them, and went through hell as well. Which makes the heroic moment to save Nagumo, Kiryu Haruka, and Haruto all the more narratively and emotionally satisfying to see play out. Kiryu's altruism reached Nagumo early on, which then inspired Yuta, Matsunaga, Takashira to give back to Kiryu what he gave them. By the time the heartbreaking end credit scenes of the game plays out, we see the impact Kiryu left on the cast, and the revelation that Kiyomi actually survived thanks to Kushimitsu not being too much of a bad guy, meaning that Nagumo can build a new life with Kiyomi and her daughter, the daughter that she shared with Somaya. It's a small change of the status quo for this group of characters, but it's a small gesture that shows Nagumo stepping into a new leadership position and rebuilding his life around him with the community he loves so dearly. It subtly pays off years later too, where we learn that Nagumo was busy with the Yakuza back home, so he sent Matsunaga and Takashira in his place for the second dissolution discussions happening in Yakuza 8 in Yokohama. By then, Kiryu gets to hear firsthand the impact he left on the Hirose family, making the events of Yakuza 6 feel especially heartfelt for an older Kiryu. If there's one thing the series does exceptionally well, it's making the connections matter through all the hardships that occur in each game. And for Nagumo himself, well, I think he's an underrated Kyodai in the RGG series. Let me know your thoughts on the best bro Nagumo in the comments below as I dive into the second half of this analysis. Enter Takasugi. Takasugi. The guy hell-bent on breaking Shrimp Nada's fingers so he can finally pay him off. Admirable, if destructive. Let's cut to the chase. Takasugi's first impression of him being a sly, douche loan shark that slowly unravels into the revelation of him being Shinada's oldest baseball fan was a 10 out of 10 masterpiece, baby. Of all the plot twists in the likeadragon series that range from simple to insane to, what did I just witness? Having Takasugi's plot twist being that he simply knew who Shinada used to be, and that Shinada's old dream paid off with good karma decades later, has stuck with me ever since finishing Yakuza 5 a couple of years ago. It's such a simple twist in hindsight that reveals a lot about Takasugi this whole time, from the little hints about his mannerisms and his calmly violent sense of humor. Shinada's been fighting the whole of Nagoya the more he digs into his past, with his ex-teammates, coach, and discovers how the Yakuza clans in Nagoya work with the locals to run their small empire. And the revelation that the one punk loan shark who's been watching Shinada like a literal hammerhead shark expecting his payday is the only dude looking out for him is fantastic. Sure, on a baseline note, Takasugi needs money just like Shinada does, so he's got to make sure his wary customer is making money. Even if that means acting like a rough Yakuza. But by the end, it turns into a fun dynamic where two dudes are now stuck going against the Yakuza corruption plot that ties back to a national baseball scandal decades earlier. Two dudes who once crossed paths and are now trying to survive in the present. During Shinada's part in Yakuza 5, the Daigo boss fight and his inclusion of being one of Shinada's old high school teammates is a bit, convenient. And while Daigo was at the end of the day a powerful figure to be on Shinada's side, since Daigo himself is trying to unravel the plot, I still think that Takasugi is the real highlight of Shinada's individual journey. He ties back more directly to the game's ideas and dreams, and how sometimes you gotta pass them on and let them evolve naturally. Case in point, the signed baseball that Shinada gave the younger Takasugi decades earlier. Now, towards the end, and by the time Shinada defeats Baba in the finale, it's Takasugi who calls Shinada to check in on him and let him know that the community he thought betrayed him in Nagoya still wants him back, and that they're still his friends to love. And we see that in their mannerisms too. Characters like Milky, Unon, and Ushijima, among others, all still wanting to be there for Shinada. I mean, even Ushijima was hesitant to kill Shinada during the warehouse scene, whereas the main Yakuza members of the Nagoya family were the real, violent thugs. Thankfully, this is where Takasugi comes in to save the day with his forklift, and later tell the shaken Shinada about his connection to his old baseball days. Now, in terms of world building, the city of Nagoya and its bizarre structure of a Yakuza family may have been the reason for Shinada's baseball scandal back in the day. And the days after that weren't kind for Shinada. He was living in a shed on top of a building. However, the small scenes like Shinada's relation of who Takasugi really was, to earlier scenes like the rooftop and parlor moments of Milky, it's clear Shinada has always been longing for people to get him out of the loneliness that's haunted him since his baseball career ended early. That's why I see the Takasugi twist working wonderfully, because it comes right after the big fight. It reveals that the Nagoya family works with an entire local community, and were so wrapped up in mystery that they were able to drive off the Tojo and Omi in the past. But the fact that they were just local people, pretty much, all in on secrets that Shinada was oblivious to as long as he stayed in his place as a nightlife journalist, makes Nagoya's Kenichicho district so fascinating to return to. All these local business owners you just interact with and residents found a way to coexist with the Yakuza in a bizarre way, even if the Yakuza themselves are still a bad thing. It's a piece of world building that I feel like was built off on with Unomichi and 6, just with the bigger emphasis on a dark secret being held somewhere in the town. Back to Takasugi, the reveal of him actually being a real bro to Shinada once that guy nearly hits rock bottom again is the shining light that Shinada needed. Since Takasugi was already a harassing lone shark, it was cool to see a more reserved and passionate side to him. And so, the journey Takasugi and Shinada go on throughout this part of Yakuza 5 is a real treat, and a part I look forward to revisiting in future playthroughs. And wouldn't you know, Shinada finally pays back Takasugi with the millions he got from Daigo, along with perhaps the real payment, another baseball for Takasugi, since he got one signed by Shinada all those years ago. Takasugi may have been a rough and calculating lone shark that would make up humorous tidbits to make Shinada feel worse for never paying it back on loans, but it makes his character feel real colorful in the short amount of screen time he has. Since Shinada is already a goofball that likes to get massages and be the fiend of the nightlife, then Takasugi's the hammerhead shark he needs to make sure he doesn't do anything too stupid. That's what bros are for, huh? I've been Mr. TDF, and let me know in the comments your thoughts on Nagumo and Takasugi alike, along with anything I should have talked about in this video. And in the meantime, check out my gazillion other likeadragon video essays. I've got like at least 50 prior videos. And I'll see you in the next one. Kapow!